You ever see a sports legend in action and just wonder how? Were they born with a tennis racket in their hand or a soccer ball at their feet? Well, today we're going to dig into that. We're going to find out when these pro athletes really got their start. And that brings up the question, doesn't it? The one that maybe keeps you up at night. Is it too late for me? You see all these kid prodigies, and it's so easy to think, well, that ship has sailed. But has it really? Is there some kind of expiration date on greatness? Let's find out. Okay, first up, let's look at the sports where it seems like you have to be an early bird. You know, the ones where starting as a toddler feels like it's pretty much a requirement. So, take a professional tennis player. Their journey almost always kicks off super early. We're talking between 3 and 7 years old. Then, boom, the serious training starts, and by their late teens, they're already playing at the professional level. I mean, it makes sense, right? Tennis is all about fine motor skills and timing, and that early start builds a foundation that's just massive. And listen, we're not talking about just any players here. We are talking about the titans of the sport. Serena, Venus, Djokovic, Nadal, they all picked up a racket when they were barely old enough to walk. It's a pretty powerful argument for starting young, you gotta admit. Now let's switch over to soccer, or football for most of the world. The story is, well, it's strikingly similar. Kids often start kicking a ball between ages 3 and 6. And get this, by 7, the most promising ones are already getting scouted for elite youth academies. Those are basically direct highways to a pro career. And again, just look at the names. Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, and Mbappé. For these guys, the sport wasn't just some after-school activity. It was their entire childhood. So at this point, you're probably thinking the case is closed, right? Starting early is the only way. But not so fast. Look what happens when you put the typical timeline for tennis right next to basketball. Suddenly, a totally different pattern starts to emerge. The start age is a little later, the jump to the pro level happens a few years later too. This suggests there might be another path to the top. And that brings us to the whole idea of the late bloomer. It's time to explore the sports where starting later isn't a handicap at all, but actually a really common and viable route to becoming a champion. See, in basketball, sure, a lot of kids start young, but the really critical period for development often hits in the early teens. It's a sport where a sudden growth spurt and just pure, relentless training can allow an athlete who started a bit later to not just catch up, but completely dominate. You've got legends like LeBron James, who started around age 9. But the most powerful example, the one that just blows this whole theory apart, Michael Jordan. Arguably the greatest to ever play the game, didn't get serious about basketball until he was a teenager. That one fact alone completely shatters the myth that you have to be a child prodigy. Athletics tells a really similar story. The window for an athlete to be at their absolute peak is just way wider, often stretching well into their 20s and even 30s. That super structured, serious training, it frequently doesn't even begin until the teenage years, once an athlete's body has had more time to develop. I mean, think about the fastest man in history, Usain Bolt. He started getting serious around age 12. Or the marathon legend Eliud Kipchoge, who began his competitive journey as a teenager. It's definitive proof you can find your true potential a little later in the game. Rugby is another perfect case. Because so much of the sport depends on raw physical size and strength, players often hit their stride later. It's very common for their journey to really formalize in school and club systems during those teenage years. Legends like Sia Kolisi and Brian Havana forged their professional paths through school rugby. It just goes to show you that development is a long game, and that foundation is often built during the crucial adolescent years. So we've seen that the physical starting line can vary wildly, but what about the other half of the battle? Let's talk about the part that often develops much, much later in life: mental fortitude. In combat sports like boxing and martial arts, the path is really flexible. You can start young to build that deep well of technique, or you can start later and rely more on raw athletic ability and sheer grit. The timeline can truly accommodate both. It's fascinating, right? On one hand, you have Floyd Mayweather, who was practically born in a boxing gym. Then you have Mike Tyson, who discovered his talent at 13. And then there's Israel Adesanya, who started his journey as a teenager. This shows that while technique is vital, it's the mental toughness that separates the good from the great. And that's a skill that can be honed at any age. And this brings us right to the core of it all. We've seen that starting age is not the be-all and end-all. So what is the true secret? What's the common thread that ties all of these incredible champions together? Here's the core truth, right here. Starting early gives you a head start, but it does not guarantee success. A head start gets you on the track, sure, but it doesn't determine where you finish. The race is long, and so many other factors are going to decide the winner. So, if it's not about the starting age, then what is it about? It's consistency, showing up every single day. It's discipline, pushing through when it's hard. It's finding great coaching, keeping that love for the sport alive, and having the mental strength to just persevere. These are the real pillars of success. Think about this for a second. Many champions were not the best kid on their team, not by a long shot. They were just the ones who refused to quit, who learned from every failure and simply kept going no matter what. So let's boil it all down to the simplest possible summary. Does an early start help? Absolutely. It's a great foundation. But what's the deciding factor? Hard work, every single time. So in the end, the real question isn't about when your race began. It's about how you choose to run it, starting right now. It's about your consistency, your discipline, and your heart. So, what's your next move?